Hello guys, welcome to the next session of developing e-commerce application from scratch using Angular and Spring Boot. In the last session we discussed on how we can create the API and create one button so that user can delete the cart item. So we have seen a delete cart item functionality in the last session itself. Now today in this session we are going to work on one more functionality that is called as a show my orders. So as of now, let me just log in with the user. So let me just try to log in with the user. So as of now, we have the home button and we have the cart button as well, but we don't have the screen where user can see all the orders that he or she ordered. So we don't have that screen, right? So we have to add that screen so that user can track the orders. So what we are going to do is we are going to add one more screen over here, maybe next to the cart, which will be saying that my orders, and whenever user will click on that button, then we will show all the order details in the form of table over here. Now to achieve these, we have to make changes at the back end and we have to make changes at the front end. So at the back end we have to create one new API, and at the front end we have to create one new component so that user can check all the order related details. So again, these are the pretty small changes, so I'm going to cover in the one session itself. So first of all, let's see how we can make the changes at the backend, how we can create the API, and then we will come back to the UI and then we will try to add some code at the Angular side. Now let me just take you to the IntelliJ, and over here we have one controller that is called as order detail controller. Over here we have to add one new API. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to use public. As of now, let me just keep it as a void, and then let me just create one method that is called as a get order details, something like this. Now this is going to be a API and this is going to be a get mapping, so we have to use get mapping, and then we have to give the path as well. So I'm just going to use get order details as a path, something like this. And again, we are going to allow the security. This API is going to be available only for the users, so I'm going to use @pre-authorize, and then I'm just going to use has role, and then the role that I just want to allow this is for the user, so I'm just going to use user, something like this. Now this API is not going to take any parameter, so we are going to keep this as it is, like we are going to keep it empty. Now the next thing that we have to do is we have to just use order details service, but before that we have to create one method in order details service. So let me just go to the order details service, and then over here let me just create one more method that is called as a public. As of now, let me just keep it as a void, and then I'm just going to use get order details, something like this. Now over here we want the username, like we want the username who is currently logged in, and that username we can easily get from our JWT filter. So previously we have created, let me just take you to that class. So previously we created one field. So inside JWT request filter we created one field that is called as a current user. So this field is basically static field, and over here if you are just wondering like from where we are assigning the value of current user, so we are assigning value to the current user from over here. So wherever we are over here, if you just see, we are accessing the username, that same username we are just assigning to the this particular static field. So again we have to just use the same static field. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to use JWT request filter dot current user, and I'm going to store it into a string. Let's suppose current user, something like this. Now what we want is, now over here we have the username who is currently logged in. The next thing that we want is we want to fetch all the order details with the help of this current user, right? So over here what I'm going to do is I'm just going to create one method inside my order detail DAO. So if I just go to the order detail DAO interface, and if I just go to the order detail, then we have one field that is called as a user. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to create one method over here, and I'm just going to make it as, let's suppose, public, and it is going to return us a list of order details, and I'm just going to give a name as find by user, something like this. So make sure you are just giving exact same name, like find by is the mandatory, so we have to write find by, and then what we have to do is we have to give a field name. So in my case, field name is user. That is the reason I'm just going to make it as a user. Only difference is I'm just going to make it as a make this u as a capital, because this is how we write method in the Java, so we have to follow that convention. So find by is a mandatory one. Then after that we have to give a field name. So in my case, field name is a user. Now over here, as we are going to find it by the user, so we have to pass the actual user as a parameter. So we have to pass user, something like this. So let me just make it as a user, and we have to give the name. So I'm just going to give it as a user, something like this. So what it basically means that it is basically going to take one object of a user, and it is going to return us list of order details, something like this. Now internally, Spring Boot will create the SQL query by itself for this particular syntax, and it will, like, we don't have to create the SQL query, it will create automatically and it will work as expected. Now let me just come back to the service, order detail service, and over here what we want is, if you just see, we have to pass the user object as a parameter, but over here we just have the username. So first of all, with the help of this username, we have to fetch all the user details. So how we can do this? We have the user DAO, and then with the help of this user DAO, what we can just do, we can just write user DAO dot find by ID, and then we have to pass current user as an ID, and then it will return us object of user. It will return us list of it will return us all the properties of user. Find by ID basically returns the optional, so we have to use get at the end, something like this. Now we have all the user details. The next thing that we want is, with the help of these user details, we want to fetch order details. So what we can just do is we can just use order detail DAO dot find by user, and then we have to just pass user, something like this, and whatever it is going to return, I'm just going to return it as it is. Now over here, find by user will return us list of order detail, but over here we are just using void, so we have to change it to the list of order detail, something like this. Now let me just come back to the controller. Over here we have to just call order detail service dot get order details, and whatever it will return, I am just going to return it as it is. Again, it is complaining because we have used void over here, so let me just make it as a list of order details, something like this. Now let me just save these changes, and let me just restart the application. And also I have started the Postman. So before that, let me just restart the application. Let's see whether our API works or not. And once we tested our API, then I'll just go to the UI part, and then we will see how we can add the new component and how we can add the table as well. So now my application is started successfully. Let me just wait till my Postman gets started, and once it is started, we'll just test it quickly. So over here now it is started. Okay, so let me just go to the login. So first of all, we have to log in, because as you know, we have created one new API which is available only for the user, so we have to pass the JWT token. So let me just click on login button, and yes, we received the JWT token. So we have to copy the JWT token, and now let me just go to a new tab, and over here let me just make it as a http://localhost. So let me just go to the 9090 / let me just copy the API name. So let me just copy it as a get order details. It is a get mapping. From the headers we have to pass the authorization, and then we have to write bearer, and then we have to paste the JWT token. So let me copy it and let me just paste it something like this. So let me just copy it again. So let me copy it and let me just paste it something like this, and now let me click on send button. So if you just see, it is giving us the 500. Let's see what is going wrong over there. So if I just go to the IntelliJ, let me just try to find out the exception, like what it is giving exactly. Okay, so let me just try to scroll up. Okay, now over here what it is saying, like no default constructor for the entity. So it is basically complaining that in the order details we don't have the default constructor. So if I just go to the order details and if I just come below, so yes, we have only like a parameterized constructor, but we don't have any default constructor. So we have to create the default constructor. So let me just create it quickly, something like this. And now let me just save these changes and let me restart the application and let's see what happens. So I'm just waiting till my application gets started. So now it is started. Let me just come back to the Postman. Let me click on send button. Yes, now we got list of all the now we got list of all the order details. So over here if you just see, we are getting all the orders. So as of now we have multiple orders, so we are getting it as it is. The next thing that we have to do is, like, now our API is working as expected. So next thing that we have to do is we have to come to the UI part, and then we will see how we can show this particular information into our Angular application or e-commerce application. So to do this, if I just come back to the VS Code, the very first thing that we have to do is we have to create one new component. So for this, let me open new terminal and then let me just type npm run ng-gc, and over here let me just create it as a my orders, something like this, and let me just wait till my component gets created. Now my component is created. The next thing that we have to do is we have to configure a root for this particular component. So to do this, I'm just going to app routing.module.ts file. Then over here what we have to do is we can copy this path for order confirmation, because it is like we have already added the constraint and added the role as a user. So let me just give the path as a, let's suppose, my orders, something like this. Component will be my orders component. We are going to can activate, it is going to be a same like auth guard, and data will be the roles, and we are going to allow it only for the user, so we are going to keep it as it is. Now let me save these particular changes. The next thing that we have to do is we have to over here we have to add one more button, and whenever user will click on that button, then we have to call the new component that we just created, right? So if I just go to the header, then if I just go to the header.component.html file, then what we have to do is we have to copy. So let me just copy the cart button and let me paste it, and let me just make it as a my orders, something like this. And again it will be available only for the user, so that is the reason we have to keep this ng if as it is, and then rest of the things will be as it is. So only thing that it will change, like we have to change the text, and then we have to change a path as well. So we have to give like my orders, something like this. And now let me just restart the application. Let's see what happens, whether it works or not, and if it is working, then we will see how to add the table and how to call our API that we have just created. So let me just wait for a second till my application gets loaded completely. Now if I just come to the Google Chrome and if I refresh the application, then we are able to see one button that is called as my orders, and if I click on it, then it's showing me like my order my orders works. So that means our component is created successfully and we are able to redirect to that component successfully. The next thing that we want is we want to show one table, but before that we have to call the API that we have just created. So we will first of all see how we can call that API, and then we will see like whatever information we will get, how we can show it to the table. So first of all, let's see how we can call the API. So if I just go to the VS Code again, and if I just go to the component that we just created, so if I just go to the my orders, and then if I just go to the myorders.component.html, myorders.component.ts, then over here, first of all, what we have to do is we have to just inject the product service. So let me first of all use private product service, something like this, which will be of type product service, something like this. Then let me just create one function that is called as a get order details, something like this. Now let me just go to the product service, and then over here we have to create one function that is like public, and let me just make it as a get order details, or maybe we can say that get my orders, something like this. And then we have to just use return this dot http client dot we have to call the get, and then we have to use http ://localhost 9090 / get order details. Make sure you are just not doing any spelling mistakes, otherwise you will end up with getting some errors. So let me just save this particular file, and the next thing that we can do is we can just come back over here, and then what we can just do, we can just use this dot product service dot get my orders, and then we have to use subscribe, something like this, and then we have to create two callbacks. First one will be for response, and if I just got the response, then I'm just going to use console.log as of now. And then if at all something goes wrong, and if at all we get any error, then I'm just going to create one more callback, and I'm just going to use console.log err, something like this. And this particular function we have to call from ng on init. So let me just use this dot get order details, something like this. And now let me just save these changes. So if I just go to the Google Chrome, and if I just open my console, and if I now refresh the application, then over here we are able to see on the console, like we are able to see the list of all the orders that we have already created. So we have total 11 orders, and we are able to see like all the order details over here. So we are able to get the list successfully on the console. The next thing that we want to do is we have to just like show this particular information on the table, so that user will be able to see it, right? But before that, one thing I'm just trying to do is one thing that I just want is I just want to create one model class, so that we can map these particular things with the help of that model class. So what I'm just going to do is I'm just going to create one file. So inside my model, I'm just going to create one file that is called as order dash details dot model dot ts, something like this. So over here, okay, it is saying that order details model already exists. So let me just check whether it already exists. Okay, so this one is different. So let me just do one thing. Let me just create file. So let me just make it as order dot model dot ts, something like this. And over here I'm just going to use export interface orders or order details, something like this. And then first of all, let me just go to the order details, and let me just see. So over here I have also used the name as order details, so I just don't want that conflict. So that is the reason I'm just going to change it as a my order details, so it will be more easy to like to differentiate between those two interfaces. So first thing that I'm just going to add is, let me just go to the Google, and over here we have the order ID, then order full name, order full contact number, then amount, and then some alternative contact number, and then we have the status as well. So what I'm just going to do is, I'm just going to first of all work on the order ID. So what I'm going to do is, I'm just going to make it as a order ID which will be of type number, something like this. And then if I just go to the Google Chrome again, then we have the full name. So let me just paste it as a full name, and it will be of type string. Then we have the third property that is called as a order full order. It is basically an address, so again it will be of type string. Then we have contact number, so let me just make it as a number. Then we have alternate contact number, so let me just copy it and let me just paste it, something like this. Okay, so order contact number and alternate contact number are of type string, so let me just change it to the string. If you just see, they are in the double quotes, that is the reason we have to give it in the string. Then we have the order status, which is again of type string. And then lastly we have the amount, we have the order amount, and then we have the product and user details. So let me just copy the order amount, which is of type number again. And lastly we have the product details. Let me just copy product, let me just copy the product, and which is of type product. So product type we have already created. And lastly we have the user, so I'm not sure whether user type is already exist or not. So okay, in the model user type doesn't exist, so I'm just going to keep it as a user as a any, because I don't want to create any model for the user. If you want, you can just create it. And now let me just save these changes. So next thing that we have to do is, we have to just go back to the product service, and we have to go back to this function get my orders, and then over here we have to just use like the type. So I'm just going to use my order details, and again it is a list. That is the reason we have to give these brackets, so that it will be returned as an array. And again I'm just going to make it as observable of type my order details, and again it is a list. That is the reason we have to mention the array, something like this. And now let me just save these changes. And if I just come back to the myorders.component.ts, then in the response also we can just mention the type, that is called as a my order details, which is of type list, something like this. Now our model model is created successfully, and we are able to get the information successfully on the console. Now let's see how we can see this particular information on the UI in the form of table. So again, to show the table, I'm just going to use Angular Material UI table. So if I just go to the official website of Angular Material, then we have one tab that is called as a table. So let me just open the table, and let me just go to the examples, or over here also we have the basic use of table, so we can just use that example also. And again, if you just don't want to follow these, maybe the official website, then also in our application itself we have used the table multiple places. You can just take a reference from those places as well. So for now what I'm going to do is, I'm just going to go to the myorders.component.html file. Then let me just remove everything, and let me just use first of all one class that is called as a container. So container is basically a bootstrap class, and then inside this we have to use one table. So to do this, what I'm going to do is, I'm just going to use table. So you can copy the very first line and you can paste it over here, and you can just at the end you can just write /table also. Then as of now we are getting one error over here, that is called as a data source. We will see how we can resolve it in a moment. Lastly, we have to copy these two rows as well. So there are basically two tr tags, so we have to copy those two tr tags and we have to paste it inside our table tag like this. And now let me save these changes. Alongside, you can just do one thing, you can just copy any one of the ng container. So let me just copy the very first ng container, which is of over here. It is given as a position column. So let me just copy it and let me just paste it over here, something like this. Now let's see how we can change all these values and how we can resolve these particular errors. So very first error, let me just resolve like displayed columns. So if I just go back to my orders.component.ts file, then what we have to do is we have to like create one array of displayed columns, and then over here we have to give like all the elements, all the column names. So my very first column name will be let's suppose as of now, let me just see like what are the different column names we have. Okay, so as of now we have the order ID, then we have the full name and order address. So let me just first of all use a full name, then address, and then contact number, and then order amount, and lastly I'll just use the status. So first of all I'm just going to use like name, then comma, I'm just going to use address, then I'm just going to use contact number, something like this, and then let me just use amount, order amount, and lastly let me just use status, something like this. The next thing that we want is like displayed column errors is resolved. The next thing that we want is we want a data source. So first of all let me just create one array over here. So what we have to do is we have to create one array. So let me just make it as a my order details, which is of type my order details array, and we have to initialize with the empty array. And then the next thing that I'm going to do is like this dot, like whatever response I will get, I will assign that response to my order details array, something like this. And then we have to copy this name like my order details and we have to paste it instead of this data source, something like this. And now let me just save these changes. Now again we are getting some errors, but don't need to worry, we have to resolve it. Like it is pretty simple. To resolve these particular errors, what we have to do is, let me just remove this comment. What we have to do is we have to like configure this ng container. So over here what we have to do, first column is all about the order, like the name of the user who have, or name of the order, like which name of the user who have ordered this, or which we have filled while placing the order, right? So what we have to do is we have to just use this column name, and then we have to paste it like inside the column definition. Alongside we have to like paste it over here, something like this. And then over here we have to do element dot, and then we have to use order, or maybe what we can just do, we can just go back to our order model ts file, and we can just copy this order full name and we can just paste it over here, something like this. So element dot order full name. So element is basically, let me just quickly tell you, element basically referred as a single row. So whenever we will talk about the element, it will by default hold the value for the entire row, and from that entire row we just want to show the full name. That is the reason we have to use element dot order full name, something like this. And now let me just save these changes. Let's see what is happening. So let me just quickly open the inspect. So over here, yes, it is saying that it is giving again some error. So no need to worry, we can just copy the ng container simply and we have to paste it one more time. Then what we can just do is we can just go to the component.ts file, then we can just copy the second column name, we have to paste it over here. And then if I just go to the model, then we have to just use the field for address, and then we have to use element dot that particular field. Again, let me just copy it and let me just paste it again. And if I just go to the TS, then we have to copy the contact number, which is column name. Then we have to paste it. We have to paste here also. And then if I just go to the order.model.ts, then we have to copy the contact number field, and then we have to use element dot that contact number field. Let me copy it again and let me just paste it. Let me just go back to the TS file. Let me just copy the fourth column, which is amount, and then let me just paste it over here. Let me just paste it over here also. And now let me just go to the order.model.ts. Then let me just copy the order amount, which is my field, and let me paste it here. And again, let me just copy the ng container and let me paste it for the last time. Let me just go to the TS file. Let me just copy the last column name, which is a status. Let me paste it over here, something like this. And let me just paste it. Let me just copy the order status, which is my field name. And let me just paste it element dot order status, something like this. And now let me just save these changes. Let's see what happens. So yes, it is like we are able to see all the order details clearly, and we are able to show the table successfully. The next thing that we want is we want like because the table is taking pretty small size, but we want to make it larger so that user will be able to see all the details clearly. So we have to apply one style over here. So if I just go back to the CSS file, then we have to apply style for the table. So we have to make width is equals to 100%. So if I just go back to the my order dot component dot css, then we have to just paste it, or you can just write it like we have to give the table and we have to give width as 100%. And if I just come back to the Google Chrome, then yes, we are able to see it as expected. One thing that I just want some margin from the top as well. So I will just quickly write one class to apply some margin from the top. So I'll just use mt5, something like this. And yes, now it is looking perfectly fine and everything seems good. We are able to see the status as well, and we have the name, address and contact number as well. As of now, we are not using any kind of dates like order dates and any kind of date, so that is the reason we don't have date. But if you have, you can just show it on the screen, and you can just add one more column over here. If you want to add any action, you can just add some action buttons over here also. Like if you just want, you can just add cancel order button or something like this. Or if you just want me to show you like how you can add it, let me know into a comment section and we will see how we can add that particular buttons as well. So I think as of now for today's session, I'll just keep it till now till only this point. If you still have any questions, let me know into a comment section. I will try my best to help you out in that case. In the next session, we will see how we can add some of the more functionalities related to the orders from the perspective of admin. So we will see that functionalities in the next session. So I hope you enjoyed this session, and I'll see you in the next session.